Hello students, welcome to the class of English literature. This is the second part of the poem My Last Duchess, composed by the very famous Victorian poet Robert Browning. This poem is a dramatic monologue. In the earlier video we have read its summary and its explanation from the line number 1 to line number 20. Now in this video, in this class, we will study from the line number 21. She had, for calling up, she had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. In these lines, the Duke, whose name is Alfonso, he is the Duke of Ferrara. He describes the Duchess as too soon made glad and too easily impressed. Means she was a very gentle lady. This is his main problem with her, but according to the Duke, it was her mistake. Too many things make her happy. She likes everything she sees, and she sees everything. Now we will move towards to line number 25 to 31. Sir, it was all one, my favor at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the boughs of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech, or blush at least. Here in these lines, the Duke elaborates further on the Duchess's tendency to see every pleasant thing as pretty much the same. If he gives a favor or mark of his esteem that she can wear, such as a corsage or piece of jewelry, she thanks him for it in the same way that she approves of a pretty sunset, a branch of cherries, or her white mule. M-U-L-E, mule means female horse. At first, the Duke suggests that she speaks of all these things equally, but then he changes his claim and admits that sometimes she doesn't say anything and just blushes in that special way. Now we will move towards to our line number 31 to 34. The Duke claims that although it is all well and good to thank people for doing things for you, the way the Duchess thanked people seemed to imply that she thought the little favors they did her were just as important as what the Duke himself did for her. After all, the Duke gave her his 900 years old name a connection to a long lasting aristocratic family with power and prestige. He thinks the Duchess ought to value the social elevation of her marriage over the simple pleasures of life. But the Duchess was so simple at her heart that she doesn't discriminate in the other petty things. She likes all things alike, and this always incites Duke. Now, line number 34 and 35. The Duke asks his listener a rhetorical question: who would actually lower himself and bother to have an argument with the Duchess about her indiscriminate behavior? He thinks the answer is nobody. The Duke thinks himself too proudy that he cannot stoop. Now we will move towards to line number 35 to 43. This sort of trifling, even had you skill in speech which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one, and say just this or that in you disgust me. Here you miss or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to yours, forsooth, and made excuse. Here, the Duke lists all the obstacles that prevented him from talking to the Duchess directly about his problems with her behavior. He claims that he doesn't have the skill in speech to explain what he wants from her. He also suggests that she might have resisted being lessoned, that is, taught a lesson by him, if she had made excuses for her behavior instead. But even if he were a skilled speaker, and even if she didn't argue, he says he still wouldn't talk to her about it. Why? Because he thinks that bringing it up at all would be stooping to her level, and he refuses to do that. Now, line number 43 to 45. The Duke admits to his listener that the Duchess was sweet to him. She did smile at him whenever he passed by her. But he says it is not like that was special. She smiles at everyone in the same way. Now, line number 45 to 46. The Duke claims in these lines that this grew, that is, the Duchess' indiscriminate kindness and appreciation of everything, got more extreme. The Duke then gave commands, and as a result, all smiles stopped together. Our best guess is that he had her killed, but the poem is ambiguous on this point. Now, line number 46 to 47. In these two lines, the Duke ends his story of the Duchess and her painting by gesturing towards the full body portrait again, in which she stands as if alive. Now, line number 47 and 48. In these lines, the Duke invites his listener to get up and go back downstairs to the rest of the company or the group of people who were waiting downstairs. Now, line number 48 to 53. We finally learn why the Duke is talking to this guy. His listener is the servant of a count, and the Duke is wooing the count's daughter. The Duke tells the servant that he knows about the count's wealth and generosity or munificence, so he expects to get any reasonable dowry he asks for. But his main object in this negotiation is the daughter herself, not more money. Now, line number 53 to 56. The Duke's listener seems to try to get away from him. The Duke stops him and insists that they stay together as they go back to meet everyone else downstairs. Before the Duke and his listener leave the gallery, the Duke points out one more of his art objects, a bronze statue of Neptune. Neptune, the god of the sea. And what is he doing? He is taming a seahorse. The Duke mentions the name of the artist who cast this statue, and his name was Claus of Innsbruck, who made it especially for him. Here, this poem ends, and this was the whole explanation of this poem. Hope you got the idea. Thank you. We shall meet again with a new poem. Till then, goodbye.